Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, putting a cap on media days across the country with 4 of the 5 power conferences stepping to the mic this week. We go to ACC kickoff. Paul Van Wagner from ESPN Blacksburg joining us, and please join Paul right there. So before we get started, Paul, people outside of the listening area right there, where can they catch you?
So we stream. We have an app. If you go to your Google Play Store or your App Store on Android and you search for ESPN Blacksburg, our app pops up. We are live from 4 to 6, Monday through Friday. Sometimes we even talk sports. It all kind of depends what's going on. We're starting to gear up for football season. So we are talking a little more football this time of year, which is always nice. But, every now and again, we do some really dumb stuff. So, it's all good. It's a fun show.
And we have fun when you come on here. So I can only imagine once you really let loose and crank it up, and you've got 3 full hours to create and talk and dive into all sorts of stuff, how much fun that gets to be.
It does. It does. We have a good time. We don't take ourselves very seriously. So if you come in listening with that attitude, you'll enjoy the show.
That is a tremendous way to approach it, because yes, I always want that to be taken into context here. We are for the smart fan, the hardcore fan. Yes, we love college football, but folks, it's not life. So let's have fun. Yeah. Let's root. Yeah. Let's have fun with each other. Certainly we can play with each other, have a little fun trash talking in a lighthearted way, but this is not life, death, and taxes. All right, Paul, regardless of the fan base mentality, Justin Fuente takes this very seriously because he's got to. His job's on the line, and he's coming off the first losing season of the program since 1992. They did get back to a bowl game, barely. But Ryan Willis had himself a pretty nice season, all things considered, in a difficult situation. And he's not necessarily the starting quarterback, or at least not the announced starting quarterback.
Yeah. This is something that Justin Fuente has done since the day he walked in. He brought Gerard Evans in, who was probably at the time the most highly touted JUCO transfer in the history of Virginia Tech. And he refused to name Gerard Evans as the starter until about week 3 of camp. Last year we kind of knew Josh Jackson going into the season was going to be the starter, but he wouldn't name Josh Jackson as the starter. Now this year, Ryan Willis, who came in and spelled Josh Jackson for a good long time last season. In fact, if you look at the numbers for Ryan Willis in the ACC, he had the 4th best QBR, behind a kid by the name of Trevor Lawrence, who I think probably a few people may have heard of, and NC State's quarterback and Syracuse's quarterback, both of whom Dungy and I can't think of the other kid's name, Ryan. I can't think of his last name right now. But those 2 quarterbacks, both seniors, both graduated. Ryan Willis had the 4th best QBR in all of the ACC. So, you look at the numbers, it would dictate that he should be the starting quarterback. The fan base sees no reason for him to not be. I get where Justin is going with this. He promised these kids that are coming in an opportunity to compete. And if you name a starting quarterback, there's no competition. But at the end of the day, you would think that he would want to have his offense in place when they take the field for summer camp. That doesn't seem to be the situation with Justin Fuente.
Justin Fuente took over a very solid program, entrenched basically in the top 25. I'm not saying that they were ranked every year under Frank Beamer near the end. There had been some slippage there from top 10 type status 10 to 12 years ago, but certainly in a very good place, good enough for Justin Fuente to take Frank Beamer's players to an ACC championship game and play within a score of Clemson. Get to a nice bowl game that year. And then obviously we saw, is it a 1-year aberration, or is it a sustained decline? That's going to be the question that's going to be answered as we watch Virginia Tech take on the ACC this year. Was that, in a sense, the line of questioning and response that Justin Fuente was faced with? Was, where's the state of this program? Where do you stand? How good are you? And how much confidence do you have going into 2019?
Yeah, there was a little bit of that. I think the thing with Fuente and what he did was that the transition from the Beamer regime to the Fuente regime was seamless. I mean, like you said, they went to the Belk Bowl, they played Clemson in the ACC championship game, but kudos to Frank Beamer. Frank Beamer didn't leave the cupboard empty when he left. You had Bucky Hodges, you had Isaiah Ford, you had Cam Phillips, you had a defensive side of the ball that returned, I want to say something like 9 starters Fuente's first season, and some of those guys were juniors, and Andrew Matua-Pawaka at middle linebacker, a senior. So you had some guys that could play and had played football for a while. Now you fast forward 2 years, and you're kind of going through the attrition of players that don't want to play for Justin Fuente because he didn't recruit them, and Fuente's bringing his guys in. And I think last year was probably just a down year because of injuries, a down year because of youth. You look at the defense, they returned 10 starters on the defensive side of the ball. And all but one of those are juniors and sophomores this year. So you're going to have one senior on the defensive side of the ball this year. So those kids have got a year worth of playing time. I see no reason for this team to not make huge strides and go back in that upward trajectory that I think Hokie Nation really expects.
Yeah, so it's a division right now where Miami is the cream of the crop on paper.
Mm-hmm.
They're a paper champion. They continue to be one. They did, of course, claim the division 2 years ago, but again, back down to marginal win totals last year. But they've got a completely different regime and a different attitude and vibe. Will that translate? We will see. The rest of the division, the likes of Duke and Georgia Tech and so forth and so on, seem to be a middling division that if Virginia, as many people believe the ascension will continue, elevates itself to win a division championship, will be the 7th consecutive different division champion. There are 7 teams in the division. This is unlike any parity anywhere in college football where we know Ohio State, Clemson, Oklahoma, Alabama. It's cut and dry everywhere else, but in the Coastal Division, it is muddied. But Virginia Tech is obviously probably the team, the program, the tradition, the facilities, everything involved, probably the most capable of being there to challenge Miami in a sustained fashion.
Yeah. And, I mean, you look at, speaking of Virginia, and I know, in our area, that's a 4-letter word. We're not really allowed to say Virginia if we don't follow it up with Tech. But, you look at Virginia, and Bronco Mendenhall has done some amazing things there with kids that are really, 2 and low 3-star recruits, and has really coached them up. You're right. Miami, every year we hear it. I think the entire ACC gets tired of hearing that the U is back. But every single year we hear that the U is back, and then somewhere along the line they stub their toe a couple of times, and they don't seem to be able to get it. Virginia Tech, they have a history of stubbing their toe also. I mean, ODU last year was a very big toe stub for them. It didn't have any effect on the ACC, but it still was kind of that beginning of the boulder rolling downhill for the Hokies. Yeah, you're right, though. I mean, this is a division. ESPN Football Power Index says, I think it's 39%, 35% for Miami, 29% for Virginia Tech. Virginia has 15%, so I mean, it's anybody's game. And I'm not selling Duke and North Carolina out on this thing either, because, again, such a close division. Grab a 7-sided coin if you can, or a 7-sided dice, and roll it. And that's who you want to bet on, because that's about the easiest way to predict this thing.
MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, checking out the live stream and the live chat, in particular with Paul Van Wagner on the line from ESPN Blacksburg. We're talking up Justin Fuente and the Hokies, and this is a tradition here, Paul, where when I see a new handle in the comments section of the live chat, I've got to do it up big with a big welcome. So for Chris Taylor, welcome to MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Chris, we appreciate you jumping on the line. Thank you so much. And Chris actually has a really good question here. Justin Fuente, the one down season, we always love to throw out the term hot seat.
Mm-hmm.
On a hot seat, does he have to meet some type of expectation to keep his job?
Hot seat, no. Expectation, yes. I think that if he fails to meet that expectation this year, now we have the conversation about a hot seat going into 2020, 2021. But I think, if you look at what this team had going on last year, again, back to the injuries, back to the youth on defense, back to the fact that, pretty much everybody is coming back as a junior and a sophomore. I think that it has to make an upward slope for the Hokies. I think that if they don't get to 9, 10 wins, I've looked at this schedule in and out. I think that there's potentially 11 wins on this schedule for them if they play completely and totally up to their capabilities. I'm not saying that the Hokies are going to go 11-1. What I'm saying is they could if everything falls their way. But I think that he definitely needs to be in that 9-win range in order to kind of quell the rumblings that we're starting to hear. And I think right now it's just nothing more than the outliers that are just kind of murmuring at this point.
Paul, you're giving me something to think about here because I'm going to have to make predictions here right before the season. As we all, I don't know if you in particular, but it seems like everybody just needs to make predictions. And I've always loved making predictions. Now I gotta admit, I feel a bit of pressure now.
Okay.
Doing this sort of thing that people are constantly asking me for predictions like 3 days after the national championship game for the next season. And I'm one of these guys that I can't pull the trigger until like 11:55 on a noon game each Saturday. So certainly when it comes to the season, it's going to be like the night before the season kicks off on that Thursday night that I'm here making predictions. And my thought process has simply been Miami's got the best team on paper. The recruiting rankings tell us the best classes, and it's not even that close. Virginia, though, man, Bronco Mendenhall, I've got a lot of faith in this guy going from 2 wins to 6 and then to 8 last year after the bowl win. And then considering what he did at BYU and what they've failed to do since he's been there, he's a really good football coach.
Yeah.
That's been my thought process. Those two, do I weigh the coaching acumen and what seems to be a better team within the team concept or the sheer talent? But you're going to make me dive a little bit deeper into the Hokies to see if I need to consider Virginia Tech.
Well, again, the schedule, you and I have talked about this. When you look at their schedule, and I've got it up in front of me right now, they start out on the road at Boston College. They play Duke at home. They play North Carolina at home. They got to go to Miami. They play Wake Forest at home. They go on the road to Georgia Tech, who's in the middle of a rebuild. They play Pitt at home, and then they go on the road to Charlottesville, which we've seen in the past. Nothing against the UVA fan base, but they don't seem to show up for the Virginia Tech game a whole lot. And maybe that's because in the past they've kind of been out of it by that point. But it's usually Lane Stadium East in Charlottesville when the Hokies and the Who's play against each other. The schedule stacks up that Virginia Tech really should be able to take advantage of those home contests this year, as long as, again, they continue to kind of grow as a football team.
I enjoyed that game. And again, take no offense, Virginia Tech fans, and certainly don't take offense, Virginia fans, when I say I enjoyed last year's game. It had nothing to do with rooting interest. I just thought it was fascinating that, okay, we've got a situation now where one program has been much better than the other for a long, long time. And now they're basically the same program. And this is before Virginia won the big bowl game. Virginia Tech lost the bowl game. So, whatever they were at the time, 7-5. 6-6, whatever the
right.
record comparison, something close to that at the time was going into the game. My thought process was, is this streak going to go to another year? And we finally got a situation where these teams are basically, they're very comparable. And just, it was fascinating to see Virginia have a bit of a stranglehold on that game and let it slip away, and the Hokies to win and notch another win in the series.
Yeah, it was. That was a fun game to be at, just simply because you saw the fan base riding through this wave of emotions, and with 5 minutes left in the game, people began to leave Lane Stadium. I mean, that was crazy. And then all of a sudden, you have a fumble, you have the Hokies take the ball down, they score, you go into overtime. I love the college overtime. Let me just say that I think the NFL needs to consider going to the college style of overtime. It's a lot more fun. But unfortunately for UVA, you look at last season and the season before, and it kind of felt like those were the two opportunities for them to end the streak against Virginia Tech. And now you look at it again on paper. I mean, it's hard to say until we actually get out there and see the kids play. But the Virginia Tech offense this year could be a top 15 offense in the nation. You look at what they have coming back, you look at the talent they have on that side of the ball. If things click, this can be an offense that puts up a lot of points. Defensively, again, I think they're going to take strides. UVA lost a lot on offense. They have a lot of players that they have to replace. They do have a really, really good quarterback, but who are his targets going to be? So I think that there are still quite a few questions for UVA, but I hope it's a good game. I've been able to see good games between Virginia and Virginia Tech in my tenure here. I enjoy it. I want to see more close games like that.
Yes, Olamide Zacchaeus was a first-team All ACC wide receiver, 93 catches last year, gone. Their top running back, 1,000-yard back, Jordan Willis, gone. And they have inexperienced players behind them. But again, arguably the best quarterback in the division. Most people would consider him to be the second best quarterback in the entire conference behind, guy that plays for Clemson. I guess they've got a player or two that are decent there, and he's one of them. My goodness, that's just to hear some of the comments made out of Clemson, and I don't think they were being arrogant. They really don't have that. Maybe they're transitioning to that Alabama, Ohio State kind of air about them, or so forth. But Dabo Swinney, at one point, when they mentioned they went undefeated the previous season, and Trevor Lawrence, he actually kind of slipped and basically said, yeah, maybe the kid goes undefeated his entire career. And then one of the offensive linemen that appeared at the ACC kickoff made a comment about basically, again, the way it was stated was so, in terms of attitude, seems so humble, but he was just basically saying, yeah, we basically know it. We can dominate if we're on our game and we're focused and we're ready to play, that we should be able to dominate whomever we go out against in the ACC this year. And it's just like, wow, this is quite the machine that's rolling.
Yeah, well, and they're not wrong. I mean, we're here in Blacksburg, and as Virginia Tech faithful, we want them to be wrong, but you look at the kids that they've got, the kids that they've recruited, what they have. I mean, Justin Fuente has said it before. This is a team that they have kids that don't even make their two deep, that anywhere else in the nation, not just the ACC, but anywhere else in the nation, these kids are starters. So, I mean, yeah, the Clemsons, the Alabamas, maybe the Ohio States under Urban Meyer. We'll see what happens here. Notre Dame is another one that seems to be on that kind of trajectory right now, but there are very few teams in the nation that can probably humble brag that way. But you know what? If Clemson wants to, I think they've earned the right at this point to make statements like that. And if somebody wants to not have them make statements like that, there's one easy way to do it. Go out and beat Clemson. And I say easy tongue in cheek, by the way.
Yeah, there it is. I tell you. And before we need to let you go, Paul, and I appreciate so much you coming on here based on not just what Justin Fuente had to say concerning the quarterbacks and the Coastal Division race, but anything else that came out of his mouth or any of the players or the ACC in general that caught your ear.
The one thing that I liked is the kids were talking about how they really feel like the chemistry on this team is good. And, that's one of the things that we've been hearing a lot because of the attrition at Virginia Tech, because of the transfer portal. We've seen a lot of these kids that weren't recruited by Justin Fuente and his staff. They've decided to go elsewhere. And there have been some questions about, does Fuente have, the kids' best interest at heart, or, or are these kids Virginia Tech kids and stuff like that. And it seems like now that he's got his people in there and his players in there, that this is a group that is going to gel and is going to continue to get better under Justin Fuente. I look forward to big things from Virginia Tech this year.
All right, Paul, we so much appreciate you stopping by. It's always a good time. We certainly would love you to bring some of your hijinks over to our show, and we can certainly maybe focus on that a little bit more. Or focus would not be the right word, because that's a little too serious. But
Yeah,
we appreciate what you do over there.
Yeah, we tend to lack focus. We tend to drift off into, we talk about a lot of things like chili recipes from time to time, and it's interesting how we get there. Let me just put it that way.
Now, the recipes per se, I could not contribute to. I am a consumer when it comes to good food. Right here, right here. And when I talk good food, I'm not talking about nutritional food, even though that's been my quest recently, has not been to buy the dozens and dozens of chocolate chip cookies, Oreos, and half gallons of ice cream each and every weekend that I typically consume and still do. But I'm generally clean during the week. But I can talk food. I can talk it up. Yes.
Pro tip for you: when you get the ice cream, get the bigger spoon. Less spoonfuls means you're eating less ice cream.
Oh, is that you count it by the spoon? I only had 18 spoonfuls. I'm usually in the 35 range, but yeah, you can get quite a, yeah. I love that measurement. We can go with that route and make me feel a little bit better.
Absolutely. We're here for you.
All right, Paul, always a good time, man. You have yourself a great weekend, great rest of your summer. And of course, football season is coming fast.
We're looking forward to it. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having us. We appreciate you.
All right. I want to remind everyone that we're slicing up these live streams, so we are going to shut this one down. And I apologize for any inconvenience, but you got to consider we got like 35 people on the line. We will have thousands watch the video, so want to separate the various teams. Therefore, shutting down right here. Just keep it locked into the YouTube channel page, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We've got Clemson coming up in just a few minutes. See you then.